Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm your host, Paul Meeks. This is Tech Tune-Up with yours truly. Today, June 17, 2025, in case you're keeping score, what we try to do over the next 20, 25, 30 minutes is to go over the key tech news, because sometimes there are ripple effects broader. Also delve into the stocks that I would buy in the sector right now and some others that I have a wait on. Sometimes I'm looking for a better price. Sometimes I'm looking for a catalyst. Then I will talk about a few tech trends, and that's more macro stuff. And then we always have a few minutes left for your questions. So let's get right after it. I think it's very interesting what's going on with AMD, Advanced Micro Devices. AMD just had an analyst day called Advancing AI Day, and this comes off the heels of Nvidia, its key rival, who had their own big to-do a week before in Paris, France, called GTC. So AMD is getting a lot of love on the street for its potential to cover some of the gap that it has technology-wise with Nvidia. I will give you the bottom line. I've owned both of those stocks, but I will tell you, if you can only own one AI GPU company at both of their prices, and both of the stocks have run quite a bit, I would own Nvidia. Even if AMD comes back, I do think that Nvidia is a year to possibly a year and a half ahead with its manufacturing and product offering. So if you can't kiss all the girls, only one AI GPU stock, still I would pick Nvidia over AMD, despite all of the very positive, very bullish AMD chatter from Wall Street the last couple of days. Meta has had some really important news. This is incrementally important news for a company that already makes a lot of news. First of all, it looks to me that they are going to be able to take some share from Google and others, because they are going to offer their advertising clients the ability to not only distribute their ads, post their ads through AI, but also create them on AI. Now, both Meta and Alphabet have been driven and will continue to be driven by digital advertising revenue. Meta will have some sort of threat, but maybe the AI offerings overwhelm that. But the one who's really in trouble, not in the short term, not in the intermediate term, but probably in the long term, is Alphabet. Because search advertising, if it all goes to AI, or a portion of it goes to AI, a meaningful portion, Alphabet search advertising could be in some peril. And we've already seen that. Their search advertising the last couple of quarters has slowed down to growing about 10% per annum. That's okay, but a drastic slowdown from where it was. So you cannot look at Alphabet a la Google the same way you did before. So Meta has a real opportunity here. The other thing that's very favorable, just announced this week for Meta, is for the first time ever, they are going to post ads on WhatsApp. Now, they bought WhatsApp in about 2014 for $19 billion. And the folks that they bought it from, the co-founders there, were adamant at that transaction that they weren't selling to Meta, Facebook at the time, for them to put ads on WhatsApp. Well, after all these years, WhatsApp has a huge following. It's been enormous success, the acquisition from 2014 for Meta. But now they are going to go after that huge glob of users and advertise. And this could be a really big uptick in Meta's revenues. So stay tuned. I would tell you that among the Mag 7 that everybody likes to talk to me about on TV, I still like Nvidia and Meta. And with Meta's news this week, it might be coming to the top of the class. I guess the last thing I should say about Meta, which I think is pretty significant, is they're spending $14 billion to buy Scale AI. And what they really want is the founder, the CEO, and the leader of that company, a fellow by the name of Alexander Wang, because he is going to come over in the transaction to Meta to run Meta's AI efforts. And he is a very big fish. Think about it. You're so damn valuable that somebody will pay $14 billion for your company to get you. I'd love to have that kind of power over my employers. So a lot of really big things going on for Meta. Databricks is an interesting company. It is a cloud storage company, a cloud data platform. It is a private company, but they do, because they're so well followed, and they're probably an IPO at some point. Why would they wait? Their valuation is crazy. But they've announced that they're running now at a $4 billion annual revenue run rate. And that is an explosive jump up from when they last told us their run rate just about 6 months ago. So we cannot yet buy Databricks. Maybe I can, but you can't. But I will tell you, the look through to the very public competitor, Snowflake, is very interesting. Now, Snowflake has had 2 quarters in a row. I've reported them here, both blowout. I'm really big on this story, and it looks like Snowflake and Databricks are the 2 key technologies to go through. I read a lot of enterprise technology officer research reports, not Wall Street stuff, but industry stuff. And so Snowflake, I would buy on any dip. The stock has been up on a flagpole recently, but on any comeback, and we'll probably have a comeback based on something that Trump says, this is a good time to buy it, because the private company Databricks is giving us a very nice tell, confirming all the wonderful things that are going on in Snowflake. So I don't own it yet, but I am going to swiftly and aggressively buy it if the stock dips just a bit. Next, OpenAI. OpenAI, another private company, but it's in the news every 5 seconds, like the best known publicly traded companies. So I thought this was interesting. They just announced yesterday a $200 million defense contract. And so they are getting in everywhere, with the consumer, with the enterprise, with the federal government. OpenAI has a lot of power because they control the data. And OpenAI will be available, at least through Siri, on your Apple iPhone. But here's what happens. In the age of AI, I think the power shifts away from the provider of consumer electronics, whether that be your smartphone or your laptop, and it moves to who are building and who are controlling these large language models. It could be a real downswing for Apple. And of course, when OpenAI goes public, and it probably does at some point, the first day it's going to be probably a top 10 market cap company in America. But more and more news, and now a foray into the Defense Department over at the federal government. Next, this is interesting. Oracle's a stock I've owned, and then I've been off, and then I've been back on, and then I've been off. I must give them some credit, despite the fact that I think Larry Ellison, their CEO, is a carnival barker. You always have to discount what he says. The company is showing some very strong AI momentum. And like a lot of the other AI hyperscalers, they are not only sticking with their capital expenditure budget for data centers for 25. They announced, when they announced their quarterly results a few days ago, that they're upping the ante. This is very good for the continued success of our AI infrastructure trade, which includes servers on the hardware side and semiconductors. And of course, I like in semiconductors 3 names. I like Nvidia, I like Broadcom, and I like Taiwan Semiconductor. So anyway, Oracle has come off out of the stands. They're at least now in my bullpen, looking to potentially buy some shares on any pullback. Next, I have been following very carefully the aftermath of the Circle IPO of a week ago. So Circle has a very popular stablecoin. And this IPO, I thought was fairly valued when it came out at 31, and then it went up several fold in a week. So of course now it's egregiously valued. But we've seen stablecoin come to the fore in the business media. Walmart and Amazon have talked about issuing their own stablecoins so they can cut out the likes of Visa and MasterCard. So Circle at some point, because it's so egregiously priced and it's a okay company, it's not a great company, it's going to become a short. And I'll tell you when to short it if it keeps on rising. But stay focused on stablecoin, because think about it. If Amazon and Walmart go in the direction of stablecoin, think about how damaging that would be to the payment processors, including, again, the likes of MasterCard and Visa, because they have highway robbery transaction fees. And so this could be a real game changer. Let's see how it plays out. So Amazon, I announced last week, continues to spend heavily on AI infrastructure, and now they're really getting aggressive abroad. They're spending a ton in Asia. They're spending a ton in Australia. And of course, they're spending a ton right here in good old USA. So you can see the international theme that this has become interesting. And of course, Amazon has the deepest of deep pockets. I'm going to end up here with Alphabet. And as I said earlier, if Meta is successful in essentially automating through AI the creation and the delivery of digital advertisements, that might be incremental for them, but it could be really bad for Alphabet. And I think Alphabet is already feeling the heat from some of its digital advertising customers because they announced that they are aggressively cutting jobs in their unit that has the search ads. We know that there's about 20 to 25,000 people that work in that unit. They did not tell us either the number or the percent that they're going to slash, but my understanding is pretty aggressive job cuts. That can be nothing but a red flag. So let's move on to some of my tech picks. Hey, if you squint, and if you don't like to squint because you're as old as me and you need probably better glasses from the script that I have right now, we'll send you the list. But there haven't been a lot of changes in my list week to week. Green are my fresh money buys in the sector. Yellow are stocks that I have some interest in, but I'm either waiting for price, like I mentioned, Snowflake, and I might also, or be waiting for maybe a fundamental catalyst that it just hasn't appeared yet. So you can see that we've done particularly well, and I tell everybody, and I hope I am right or continue to be right, because the stock is skyrocketed off the bottom, because every time I'm on TV, and I'm on TV several times a week, I tell everybody that AppLovin is my favorite pick. Shame on me if that doesn't end up being a home run, because I've been telling everybody. So you can see that my list hasn't changed much. I will tell you that last week, probably since I last appeared last Tuesday, I bought some more AppLovin, no surprise. I think my buy limit, which was hit, was 376 a share. I also bought some Netflix on the big drop that the stock had over a day or two with all these announcements of mergers and acquisitions with the traditional media companies like Warner Brothers Discovery and Disney. And I tried to buy some more Robinhood, but I set a buy limit in the high 60s, and it got down to the low 70s because that company and AppLovin last Friday were snubbed. Everybody thought they were going to be included in the S&P 500 when that index was rebalanced, which was last Friday night. The stocks for both of those companies rose quite a bit in lieu of that. And then, unfortunately, they both got snubbed. And so the stocks got down, and I try to buy them both. That's what I do. So I will tell you that Overall, and I get to that in a minute on my trends, I'm still holding a pretty high cash hoard, though I have been spending some of it because, as I'll get to in a second, I continue to be worried about the chance for downside volatility between now and maybe into July 9th, which is when, unless there are some more trade deals negotiated and signed, and we only have a couple weeks to do that, those are when the initial U.S. tariffs that were promised should go into effect. So, could be really interesting. So anyway, that's why I show you my fresh money buy list. That's why I show you on the next page my in yellow waiting list. So you have stuff to buy, but right now I've been spending some of my dry powder, but I still have quite a bit of it. So I encourage you to circle these names up just like I do. And when I see opportunities, like I did see last week with AppLovin, Robinhood, and Netflix, that's when I swoop in. You can't really do that unless you do the homework in advance, or at least you can't do that with confidence. So let's now get, as we always do, to some of my tech trends. As you know, I'm a Fed watcher because, as you know, I am adamant in my belief that tech and other aggressive growth stocks cannot go up consistently and strongly without lower rates. And of course, monetary policy, or the manipulation of our benchmark interest rate since 1913, has been controlled by our central bank, the Federal Reserve Board. Now, these dudes meet every 6 weeks, and they're actually meeting this week. And if you look at CME's FedWatch tool online, they're telling you that there's no chance that they are going to do anything with rates, particularly not lower them. Then they will have another meeting in 6 weeks. The betting on the street is, again, no change. The betting on the street is by the time we get to the September meeting, and that'll specifically be September 17, the Fed may lower interest rates 25 basis points, is what we call it on the street, which means in English language, 0.25%. So stay tuned. It is more important than you think to tech stocks and to the financial markets. There have been a lot of very interesting quantum computing announcements as of late, particularly in Paris at Nvidia's big to-do called GTC, and then at some follow-on meetings, their CEO, Jensen Huang, who's essentially this era's Steve Jobs, so everything he says, people watch very carefully and quite often heed his warnings or his optimism. But he is saying, and he's changed his tune in the last 6 months on this, that quantum computing is going to pretty quickly reach a inflection point, meaning that once we reach that inflection point, we could trigger a real big move. And it could be a investable theme, and it could be explosive, a la AI, when AI came onto the scene, when ChatGPT was first announced in November of 2022. Besides Jensen Huang, IBM, which, believe it or not, the broken clock is always right twice a day. IBM has come back from doom. And because they're the big iron mainframe company, they actually have, among the major tech companies, among the incumbents, a big lead in quantum computing. Maybe they get their mojo back. Can you imagine? IBM circling back to a success from the 1960s and 1970s. But they claim that they are going to deliver by 29, it's only 4 years away, a fault-tolerant quantum computer. So there's not a lot of question about the speed and power of quantum computing. There is a big question, very big scientific challenge, if they can minimize errors. IBM seems to have this on track. At least that's what they claim. We'll see. The next theme, as we saw through these Alphabet layoffs in their search advertising business segment, that global ad spend, particularly on digital advertising, is starting to slow, particularly for the king of these search vendors with a 90% share of that mode of digital advertising alphabet. So AI, even though it's very early stages, could have a huge impact. So originally, when we got into January 1st, the expectation for global digital advertising spend this year was going to be about 8% greater than last. Now we still have growth, but it's been revised down 200 basis points or 2% from 8% growth to 6% growth. And I bet the next time that they give a forecast, they will be lowering it again. And it could get even worse if we have a recession. Then just organically, naturally, advertising dollars will slow as well. So anyway, it's huge because a lot of major tech and fintech companies depend on the continued growth of digital advertising spending. So as we know, weaseling its way through Congress, which is probably never an easy task, but there's an excellent chance that Congress is going to halt the very luscious over time tax credits that purchasers of electric vehicles get. I'm sure that caused some consternation between Musk and Trump, and I'm sure that's part of the battle between those two men who used to be fast friends and now not so much. But that would be a real bad thing. I'm not breaking news here today. We've known this, but I've been following it carefully as it goes through Congress. This could be really bad for the EV industry. Really bad, particularly here in the States. This is kind of interesting. We know that the U.S. is embroiled in a battle with the Chinese. And we know that the U.S. supports Taiwan, and Taiwan probably expects that we will support them with boots on the ground if they are attacked by mainland China. To this point, because this is nothing new, the Taiwanese have kind of stayed in the background on this whole trade battle between the two major countries. But now they have created an export control blacklist of their own, and they have put Huawei on it and SMIC, which is the largest semiconductor company in China. And so now they are prohibiting trade in and out of Taiwan with those two hugely important, at least in Asia, Chinese tech companies. Kind of an interesting escalation and a taking of sides as we see that it's not just China and US. Now it's maybe China, US, and Taiwan embroiled in this thing. Of course, we're hoping for a Trump trade deal by July 9th, but I'm not too optimistic given the fact that it's already, so late in the month of June. We'll see. Interesting. I think it's a pretty disappointing deal that I'm hearing about the negotiations between the US and China. I was hoping, and maybe I was just naive, that when it came to the export controls, China was going to give us rare earth materials, which we need desperately. And in exchange, we were going to give them some AI GPUs to train and infer their big models from the likes of Nvidia. But it looks so far that the semiconductors are let out of that negotiation. And now we have a situation where we get Chinese rare earth minerals. That's good. And we allow them to send some Chinese students to NYU and Columbia. Now, I'm a retired college professor, so I will tell you, I'm a big bull on academics. I want everybody to go to college and receive education on all levels, the best they can get around the planet Earth. So that's not my problem. My problem is, wow, if AI GPUs are not considered in that deal, because right now Nvidia's chips to China are zero, it's essentially a cutoff. And at one time, China was about 15% of Nvidia's sales. Now, luckily, the company is doing so strongly in other markets that it's been able to power through the Wall Street estimates, despite that big hole. But if that big hole is a permanent hole and we cannot participate with our AI infrastructure in China, there is going to be some hell to pay. particularly for Nvidia and the whole AI infrastructure market. So I'm really disappointed. We have to have those AI GPU prohibitions on exporting to China. Please release them. Super important. So I always like to give you a little down low, everything that's going on. I try to be quick and concise with what I think is happening, particularly with my tech trends. I still think that there is a good chance that we will get to July 9th and there won't be as many trade deals as you would expect, or the trade deals that are announced at the last minute aren't very satisfying. Like I just told you, I'm very disappointed with how the China deal seems to be progressing with the US. So with all that, I still think there's a pretty good chance that we will melt down because of this into a recession. So I don't think the recession will be particularly long lasting or particularly deep, but I do think we have a recession. And I would say that I'm probably contrarian with that statement because most of the economists that I read and I talk to a bunch, they're a little bit more optimistic than I am. But anyway, recession is what I see. Thus, I still have some dry powder in cash waiting to buy my tech companies lower because I think they could very well in the next couple of months go lower indeed. So those are the tech trends. What I'd like to do, open up the floor to some questions. I see Duke is not on your list anymore. Okay, Sam. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I still have the company. I haven't sold it. But what's happened is I'm now seeing some more fresh money buys in my traditional tech sector. And I have some other plays that I think are perhaps even better defensive plays. Like I've reported a couple of weeks ago that I've done very well hiding in some of the drug distributors like McKesson and Cardinal Health. And so I have no problem with any change. I see no change in the fundamentals of Duke. I still own the stock, but I'm getting more fond of buying opportunities in my traditional aggressive growth tech sector. And when I play defense, I think I can do better there. Paul, are you still in Palantir? I do have a position in Palantir, though the reason that Palantir isn't on my fresh money buy list is because there's been some very big insider selling once we got that stock to about a 125 to 128 handle. Of course, the stock is now in the 130s. And maybe it keeps rising, but I just think it's too expensive. How about defense? Lockheed, Raytheon, Northrop, all dependent on the, oh, wow, vicissitudes. That's a nice SAT word. Yeah, I would agree. Nobody likes wars, but maybe the defense contractors, for a lot of reasons, well before the recent conflict between Israel and Iran, I have owned RTX. So I haven't looked at the other two that closely, but I've done well with RTX over time, and I haven't sold a share. Paul, do you follow LEU, monopoly and nuclear fuel? Jay Rice, I do not, but you know what? I'll take a look for you. I'll report back next Tuesday. All right, guys. As always, I appreciate your attention. Will you please like me? Will you please consider Benzinga, my partner? Will you please consider over my shoulder Harvest Portfolio Management, where I manage all my tech portfolios for folks like you. But anyway, reach out if you need me. I got one stock to follow up on. Promise I'll be back to you next Tuesday with that. Until then, have a good week.